You know, when the global economic collapse recently occurred, a lot of people were surprised that the media didn't warn them more about the impending disaster. Do you think that's true, or are people just not paying close enough attention?
It's a symptom of what's happened to the media business, the advertising-supported media business. People go along. They have so much to do. There aren't as many good editors around anymore. There aren't as many good journalists around anymore. And so there's this tidal wave of information. I think that this is a real crisis. This is symptomatic of a broader problem that we have out there. Some companies are basically saying, look, every company can be a media company. We can be our own news outlet. And so the journalist, well, they just give the journalist the content. They give the journalist the story. They give the journalist the video, the spokesperson. Everything's prepackaged. The journalist is busy. The journalist editor has 6 other things going on. Mm-hmm. The editor is concerned about the marketing department. So the PR agency says, here is your story. It's all done already. Maybe that's good for the PR business, but I'm not sure that's very good for democracy.
Mm-hmm. Do you think maybe the PR people working for the financial sector bear any responsibility for the lack of knowledge?
I think it's a sad reflection on the development challenge that PR still has in this world. A lot of people senior in the industry will give speeches about how PR should have a seat at the table where major corporate decisions are made. And some companies certainly do listen to what the PR person says if the PR person is good enough. But I think there's still this junior assignment of lower rank to the PR person. I think maybe some people did say, wait a minute, is this really the truth? Should we be asking more searching questions? Is this really the case? Either they weren't listened to because they're too junior, or they didn't know their own business well enough to ask those questions.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you'd been doing the corporate communications for some of these companies and you learned that there were some terrible truths that were covered up internally, what would you do?
I would forcefully advise the executive to come out and put their facts on the table into the public domain as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. Because if they don't, this information is going to come out anyway. And with social media today amplifying the speed and impact of criticism, you can't let happen this information vacuum that arises. Whoever speaks first is most credible. The denial of an accusation, if the company's slow off the mark, it's simply going to amplify the extent that the negative conception is famous in society. So come off the mark fast, tell the truth. It's the paradox of transparency.
Well, what's happening to marketing with the decline of the traditional mainstream media in the wake of the emergence of social media?
Marketing's becoming a relationships business. It's not so much how much advertising you can buy. You can't really buy it, you've got to be it. You have to show an authenticity. You have to show a value add when you deal with stakeholders. You have to communicate with people in a very customized one-on-one way, in a way that's customized to their needs. It's not any longer a company communicating in a simple way to a mass audience.
Mm-hmm. Bob, with the rise of advanced technology, there are some people who say that companies don't need PR people anymore because technology now gives them the power to communicate directly, not only with the media, but also with the media's consumer audience. Are publicists' days as gatekeepers to the media now over?
They've been over for a long time. It's been a long time since PR people's primary role was to be the gatekeeper with the media. PR people are strategic corporate advisors on business building communications. That's their primary role. And I think if you look at what's going on right now, it's evolving. PR people used to be part of this one-way, top-down corporate monologue to a passive group of consumers just sitting there receiving information. Now they're forging conversations, a peer-to-peer horizontal dialogue with stakeholders, where the credibility doesn't come from the control. The credibility comes from the conversation. That's a radical transformation of our role.
Well, what are your views on social media and how that's a game changer today?
I think it's making it very easy for companies to be attacked by critics who don't like something a company has done. The retail zap, for example. You're renting a car at Hertz and you don't like how long it's taking you. So you're sitting there on your BlackBerry, you say, Hertz's customer service is terrible. Well, for a lot of companies now, you will hear immediately from their PR person on Twitter. They'll say, I'm sorry about your experience. We regret the fact it's taken so long. How can we address your concerns? So millions of people can now criticize a company. But the company itself, it has to have the capability to talk to those people who are satisfied and who wish to co-create the positive brand, but they also have to be able to have a dialogue and address the concerns of those who are not happy with the brand. But that open, fearless dialogue is the basis of trust and credibility for a brand.
I like your use of the word fearless. What about you? Do you use social networks? And if you do, which ones?
I've been using Facebook for many years now, and I started using Twitter this year. Friend feed is something I'm dabbling with right now. Instant messaging and networking are things that I've had a long time interest in. I've been involved with technology since the early 90s working with Microsoft. I think it's such an exciting time, and it's really changing, radically transforming what PR people do.
Well, how did you use Facebook at Edelman Japan?
That's a very interesting question. We were able to inspire the confidence of multinational corporations to hire Edelman in Japan for their Japanese communications because they would see the pictures, the videos, the other examples of great work being done in Japan on my Facebook page, which I optimized for this commercial purpose. I think more people learned about my Japanese colleagues' activities through my Facebook page than they learned through intercompany communications, like the company's intranet, for example.
Right. But what about Twitter? You know, Twitter conveys everything from the mundane to the meaningful. Is Twitter a passing fad? Is it here to stay? And what kinds of things can communications people do with Twitter?
I think what Twitter does is here to stay, whether or not it's under a different label or somebody else absorbs it. We'll see about that in the future. I think it allows you to speak instantly with a public URL, public web address, to anybody you want to. It used to be, in crisis communications, we used to have what was called a dark site. We'd have the, well, what if something goes wrong website, and if something did go wrong, it would go live. But that still takes a lot of effort. With Twitter, you can immediately put that link out there and talk to people right away. And if you've already had a conversation going with them in the first place during good times, before the crisis, you'll have already pre-achieved a certain degree of trust and credibility. I think that's one of the most exciting applications. And of course, as an early warning system, as a company's radar, eyes and ears, it can pick up a lot of trending issues, risks, before they become full-blown crises.
What's corporate communications going to look like 10 years from now?
I think if there's one area that's underdeveloped in corporate PR today, it's this. Despite all this talk of the relationship imperative with stakeholders and the importance of communicating with people one-on-one in a customized way, I think database development and the delivery of communication to individuals is still not smart enough. So I think with better databases and with smarter software, we're going to be able to, from the desktop in a real-time way, communicate with people in a far more clever manner than has been the case in the past. I think 5 years from now, communications are going to look as advanced compared to current digital practice as it looks compared to the PR back in the early 90s when we still had an IBM Selectric typing out fixed press releases on paper in filing cabinets in drawers next to the fax machine.
What's next for Bob Pickard?
I'm looking for an opportunity, in addition to my work with students and with other PR industry stakeholders, to apply my background in international communications to helping an organization of global consequence and scale adapt some of these new digital techniques to what overwhelmingly around the world are still abundantly analog situations. I want to use the psychology of persuasion. I want to dabble in some of the neuromarketing information I've read about to be a modern, state-of-the-art corporate communicator working to help a company do things that haven't been done before.
Bob, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff.